Hi everyone, welcome to the Raw Show with Michael McDonald and I have a very special guest. We have Awren Bardsley joining me today. Awren, thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you very, very much for having me, Michael.
Awren is a wellbeing practitioner who delves into the broader and deeper levels of health and wellbeing and is the founder of Evanstar Wellbeing. Hope I got that name right. She explores how science and nature are always at work in alternative health and wellbeing. Awren specializes in looking at underlying causes, including metaphysical anatomy and epigenetics, preventative health, and energetic balance on all levels. So this sounds, at least to me, that we're going to dive into excuse me, a lot to do with medicine and how we can help diagnose certain things. But I thought we would start with your background, if that's all right, Awren. So could you tell me and our listeners where you were born and what it was like for you growing up?
Absolutely. So I was born in Melbourne in Australia, where I still live. So I have gone far, but haven't lived anywhere else for very long yet. And grew up in the 80s in Australia, and it was a great time. I had a younger brother. Both my parents were teachers, so they got school holidays, so we'd have family holidays all over different places in our state of Australia. And yeah, had lots of friends around the neighbourhood. I'm always telling my kids at the moment, we've been watching the show Stranger Things on Netflix, so I'm always like, yeah, that's how it was like for us, riding our bikes around, staying out until dark, just had to get home for dinner, a bit different than it is these days. I guess something that's significant that happened for me when I was growing up was when I was 8. One morning we were having breakfast before school and my mum collapsed in the kitchen. And that was pretty scary as an 8-year-old. And she got taken to hospital, and in the end she was diagnosed with lupus, with SLE, and so had a really long battle with this really can be quite a destructive disease. But it was just horrible as a child, seeing your mum go from somebody that you see as, really strong and invincible and able to do everything, to someone who, just couldn't do that. She was just tired all the time. She used to walk us to school and back, and she would have to come and pick us up in the car, and just little things like that you'd notice as a kid. And I remember sitting down at the dinner table saying, right, everybody, we've got to help mum around the house. And, this is me again as an 8-year-old saying that. So, yeah, it was scary. And I probably haven't really accredited it with much in my background, apart from the fact that it did spark my interest at a pretty young age in alternative therapies, because I think initially my mum didn't go down that path. She very much stuck with Western medicine. But certainly then throughout my childhood, she was exploring lots of different things, yoga, meditation, qigong. She saw a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, and just tried various different things. And at some point, although I think that was when I was growing up, she actually did her first qualification in Reiki, which is my main modality. And again, I don't remember at the time particularly thinking a lot about it, but I must have, locked it away in the back of my brain. And it was always there, and it was always something that I thought, I want to do that, I need to do that. And then when I got to my midlife crisis, I did. So yeah, I guess that was just an input. Apart from that, I had a great childhood. I certainly had some. I remember when I was a teenager, I had an amazing result from having some acupuncture myself. I'd had chronic tonsillitis for what seemed like months and on and off antibiotics, and then my mum actually took me to a TCM practitioner and had acupuncture and had some disgusting herbs that I think I ended up not taking them all, but in the end, very quickly, really, my tonsillitis was gone, which was amazing. So I guess I've always had that openness to alternative therapies, and then have finally gotten into it as in the second part of my professional career, I guess.
Right? Did the acupuncture actually get rid of the tonsillitis then? Or I mean, I'm not really familiar on what that is. But would you be able to explain to us what acupuncture is and if it played a part in curing you of the tonsillitis?
Yeah, so acupuncture is, again, I shouldn't say again because I haven't talked about it yet on this podcast, but acupuncture works with the body's energy channels. So specifically, acupuncture works with meridians, which are energy pathways through the body that we can't see, although there is more research now trying to be done to actually work out where they are, as far as Western medicine is concerned, because certainly in Eastern and alternative practices, they're very well recognised. So acupuncture actually puts needles just a little bit into the skin on the different places on the energy pathways. So they're special points called acupressure points, and the practitioner will work out where they need to go depending on which meridians are out of balance. And yes, it did. It totally got rid of my tonsillitis. So I can't remember how many sessions I had to have, but I thought that was totally amazing at the time, and I still do, and I've had acupuncture since then as well. It's not something that is a part of Reiki, but we are using the body's energies, natural energy pathways in Reiki as well. So I guess that was my first interest into the natural energies of the body and how they can be used to heal ourselves.
Right. So one of the guests that I've had on in the past has talked about something called tapping or taping. I can't quite remember the
tapping.
Tapping. Yeah, it seems a little bit similar to that because it responds to the pressure points on the face, if I remember rightly, to do with certain parts of the body and that kind of thing. And it kind of reminds me of, again, you probably know a lot more about this than I do, but like parts of the foot as well can also relate to parts of the body. I think it's related to the nervous system or something like that, because obviously the feet and hands are the peripheral nervous system, and it all kind of links together that way. Is that how it sort of works?
That's right. So that's absolutely right. So tapping and reflexology is the practice.
That's the one.
Yeah. So there's really a map of the whole body on the bottom of your foot and on the palm of your hand, and you can touch certain areas on your foot or your hand, and that will play a part in moving the energies in that particular body meridian for that part of the body. And tapping it's the same. It's using acupressure points on the face. You're absolutely right.
Right, cool. No, it's just something that I'm really interested in, because I think, although unfortunately I'm on the basis of always standing by places like the NHS and the National Health and all that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a believer in that side of things. It's something that I can't really help because I'm also diabetic. So it's hard for me to turn around and say, well, it doesn't work if, it's saved my life on many occasions. So it's I guess it's hard if you're someone that's been very positively impacted by something that is currently well used, in comparison to the things that you mentioned as well. But it is something that I am interested in because people have benefited from it as well. So it's just kind of the same thing where if you benefited from it positively and you've gotten results from it, as you mentioned with the tonsillitis, then obviously you're gonna believe in it because you did it and you got the result at the end. But I'm interested to know, is there anything else that you did for your tonsillitis alongside it?
Well, so I'd initially had lots of doses of antibiotics, as I said, and the Chinese medical practitioner gave me Chinese herbs as well to have at the same time. But I can definitely tell you I did not take them all because they were so disgusting. That is unfortunately pretty common, but I'm sure now as a grown-up I can handle it. But just on what you said, I totally agree. It shouldn't be an either-or. There are some absolutely amazing things that Western medicine can offer us, and, a lot of the time you do need to take an approach of just grabbing the bits of whatever practice it is that work for you. And I would never, ever tell somebody to, stop taking their medication or, no, you shouldn't have that surgery if that's what a medical practitioner has told them to have. But what I do with Reiki offers a fantastic support tool for that. So for things like if somebody is having surgery, then I would definitely recommend that they have Reiki before the surgery and then after the surgery. There are more and more studies being done. There are more and more hospitals having Reiki as part of their treatment process and recovery process to just provide people with that extra support because it brings about energetic balance in the body. So even the Harvard Medical School in the US has a Reiki practice as part of what they offer to their patients to help them to recover and get better more quickly, to deal with pain, to deal with stress, to deal with anxiety. So it's really exciting to be in the space now because there's more and more research being done on the benefits of it and getting it into and connected with and used with Western medicine a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can definitely see a lot of these practices at least working together. Like if we do them at the same time, I can definitely see them getting, fairly big results at least, particularly in sort of conjunction with a lot of medicines that are out there at the minute. What would you say to someone that was like, well, how do I actually know like the actual benefits from doing it? Now I know that there's a lot to be said for doing things long term. If you do something for the year, it's always going to benefit you more than doing it once and then never really doing it again. But if in terms of like the actual impact that you can feel like in the moment, like if you go for a massage, say, you can feel definitely relaxed as a result of doing it, depending on how intense the massage is. But how would you define the benefit in terms of like after the actual treatment itself, like the initial result?
So, great question. It's the same as with massage. So most people will feel something immediately. They will have that absolutely the same. The first benefit, probably the first immediate benefit of Reiki is also relaxation. So actually when they are receiving Reiki, most people will feel some sensation, and it might be different sensations throughout the body. So typical things are they'll certainly feel heat. We're working with energy, so that totally makes sense. They'll feel heat, they'll feel a tingling sensation, they might feel sort of a buzzy sensation in their body. A lot of people will feel like there's certain parts of their body that go really heavy during a session, and like they couldn't lift their arm if they wanted to, that kind of feeling, pins and needles kinds of sensations. And also then the opposite of the heaviness, that a lot of people will feel really light and floaty and might have, I guess, more sensations in their mind, like they'll have it's almost like a dream, but they're not asleep. Having said that, a lot of people are so relaxed during Reiki that they do actually fall asleep as well, which is fine. They don't need to feel anything for it to work. But certainly people do feel things immediately, and a lot of the time, especially after their first session, then they will feel just totally amazing. Sort of, a lot of people will come and see me because they are feeling anxious and uptight and stressed, and they'll, get off that table and they'll feel really relaxed. And, then I certainly have amazing outcomes for people with pain as well, that they, have had some hip pain that they haven't been able to deal with. And hips are a really big one because we do store a lot of emotion in our hips, and they'll get up off that table. And, I remember one lady saying, I felt like I was dancing out the door because her hips just felt so much better. So people certainly do feel things immediately. And then, as you said, if they are really trying to deal with something that they have been experiencing for some time, and that is often the case that they do, then having more than one session is certainly going to be of benefit, because it's like peeling off an onion. You've got to get through the layers and get right down, using energy to the underlying causes of what they're experiencing, and working through the physical level and the emotional and mental levels to try and peel everything back and, get them a long-lasting result. And then I'll certainly recommend, and a lot of my clients find that it's great to then kind of have a tune-up like you do for your car. You have a bit of a service every now and again. So they'll come back every month, or some people might come every 3 months, to just bring that energy back into balance, to help their body get that energy back into balance again.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, I've always been a little bit. I don't want to say skeptic, because I'm definitely leaning more towards the more alternative things. But if someone was quite skeptical about it, so people who are listening to this might be quite skeptical of the alternative side of things, like the Reiki and that side of stuff. So how would you go about? I don't really want to use this word now, but how would you go about selling it to someone that would be a skeptic of the practices that you actually take part in?
Well, if someone was highly skeptical, I wouldn't bother, Michael. I just think that you need to be in the right space in your head to get a really good benefit out of it. However, if somebody was just like, oh, well, I've never tried it before, but I'm curious, which I do get a lot of, then absolutely, like, the results speak for themselves, really. I can certainly talk to them, just like I have now, about results that I've seen for other people, and not just with physical pain, as I spoke about before, but certainly people who've had amazing changes in their emotional lives, that they've come in being a total wreck after having a relationship breakup is a really common one, and then find that they are able to actually bring their lives back together, feel like they want to look after themselves, be able to release that pain and that sense of loss, and move on to bigger and better things in their lives. So you know, I can certainly speak about numerous examples of where people have had results like that to somebody who's, you know, slightly skeptical but interested. But for people who are really totally skeptical, coming into it saying, well, this isn't going to work for me, well, it's not, because I think that if you have blockages towards receiving the energy, then you're not going to receive it, because everything is energy, and that emotional and mental feeling about what I would do is going to stop that energy being received by your body. And in that way, I mean all levels of your body, as in mental and emotional and spiritual, as well as the physical body. So, yeah, I wouldn't waste my time and their time trying to sell it to them.
Right, so it seems that, to me at least, it's almost like a placebo effect. So it's like, if you really don't believe that it's going to work, then it won't. And if you really do believe that it'll work, then it might actually benefit you from just me, because you might actually engage more with it, for instance. You might, kind of accept things a bit more, which means that the results might actually be better as a result. How much would you say that actually plays a part in it? I think it is called the placebo effect. But how would you go about sort of noticing how much actually believing in what it is that you're doing plays a part in the results that you get?
Well, there are certainly lines of thought that Reiki most of all is a spiritual practice. That is not the way I think about it and work with it, because I think it basically comes back to science, and although we can't see these things and how it works, we can't actually see energetic centres in the body and the meridians, as I spoke about before, but we can see the results that we get from working with it. So it's a results-based practice rather than an evidence-based practice. But but as I said before, everything is energy, and if your thought energy is negative towards something and the benefits you're going to receive, then I don't believe that you're going to receive them. Now, you may still receive some benefits, but you're going to discount them anyway. So what would be the point? So I think certainly some people do take that approach of, well, it doesn't really matter if it's not actually doing me any good. If I believe it's doing me good, it's doing me good. And again, it's all energy. It's your positive thought energy, again, working in a positive way for your body. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
What I quite like as well, something that I just want to maybe underline for people, is that it's about the results versus the evidence, so to speak. So you mentioned that it's a results-based practice as opposed to an evidence-based practice, and I quite like that. It seems to roll off the tongue quite well, but it does make sense, because there's a lot of things that there might not be evidence for right now, but there might be evidence for, in maybe 5 years' time. I mean, there's a lot of things that we did believe about 10 years ago that now we don't really do anymore, and that's the fact that evidence perhaps has maybe caught up to the results. And I think we could be at least in a very similar situation where people like yourself might actually be ahead of the evidence, because you're using people's actual results to guide your practice, rather than what people have felt valuable enough to research themselves. Because, if no one actually wants to go out there and study these things, then there's going to be no evidence for them, just because people haven't done the studies. But I can definitely see that being the case. And results. If 100 people get results, that in itself is evidence, because I can't see but I personally can't see a difference between someone conducting a study and you doing it with, 100 clients, say.
Yes.
I guess the only major difference would be it might be more controllable, like the situations might be more repeatable or controllable or whatever the case is. But in terms of like trying to deliver a service to someone, it is going to be tailored to a certain degree. It's not going to be the same over and over again, like some kind of almost like this cookie cutter type thing. And there is then a reason why it might only work for half the population. But if it is more specialised, then I'd imagine the percentage might go up.
That's right. And I mean, there are numerous examples from Western medicine where we started using things without really understanding how and why they worked. And it's 5:30 in the morning and I can't think of an example. I'm very sorry, but
it's all right.
So that's absolutely right. And yes, there's a very small number of controlled, double-blind studies on Reiki and how and why it works, but they are starting to be done a lot more. So I think, in the years to come, there's definitely going to be more evidence to try and to be around to be able to make people who are skeptical a bit more open to receiving the energy that they could receive from Reiki. But at the moment, we're in the early days of those kinds of studies, but absolutely I and every other Reiki practitioner out there, and there are many of us, can talk about all the results that we get from our clients.
Now, this might seem a little bit of a strange question to ask, but the nature of the more Western or the more popular method of taking medication and treatments and things is that there's always an element of it not working. There's always a percentage that it works for and a percentage that it doesn't, and you're taking the thing that will probably work for the most number of people, which is why it's probably more heavily prescribed. But have you ever had an occasion where the alternative medicines hasn't worked for somebody?
Look, I've certainly had people who have come to see me once and then not come back again.
Yeah.
So I would assume that they have felt that they haven't got much benefit out of it, and that's why they haven't come back again. But usually, those people don't let me know that that's exactly how they feel. I think people are a bit polite about that. They don't want to feel like they're hurting your feelings or something. I'm not sure. But they generally don't call me up and go, no, I didn't feel any benefit, so I'm not coming back again. They just don't come back again. But, yeah, otherwise, I think that, again, it's all about how much you want to use that practice, how open you are to changing other things in your life around it as well, because Reiki is amazing, and working with the body's energies is a fantastic way to bring about change in your life. But you can't just do that. You can't expect that you go and see any kind of alternative health practitioner and then don't change anything else in your life outside of what they do for you or help you with, and expect to be able to change your life. You need to have an approach of a holistic approach to your own well-being and take everything into account. So especially something I'm very, very passionate about is food, and what energy you are putting into your body is absolutely critical, and making sure that you are giving your body the nutrients that it needs and not giving it a lot of toxins and things that it doesn't need and doesn't know how to process. And then all the other things that I think most people are aware of, but then a lot of people still don't put into place. So drinking lots of water, getting enough sleep, moving your body, so doing exercise, Something else I'm really big on is meditation as well. So looking after your mental and spiritual health, doing things like meditation, and taking that holistic approach, doing and being around, doing things you love, being around people you love, just general, overall looking after yourself and your well-being is what you're going to need to do to change your life. You can't expect any practitioner, or no matter what they are practicing with regards to medicine, to change your whole life for you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before we started the recording of the people that exercise all the time, and then they wonder why they're not losing weight if they're eating, twice as much as they probably should every single day. It's almost like ice skating uphill to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and the bottom line here, Michael, is really that we all can heal ourselves, and that is what we are working with in any modality. Again, that the body has this amazing innate ability to heal itself, and if you're not doing things to look after it, then it can't possibly do that. So, people like, unfortunately, to have a magical pill and be able to just swallow something down every day and think that that's going to change their life, but it's not, because you're just treating a symptom and you're not changing anything about what the underlying cause of your condition is, and you're not taking responsibility and control of your own health, which is you are the person in charge.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely echo that. And this kind of leads on to, well, it leads on quite nicely, actually, to this idea of how do we decide on which one to go for. So with all of these certain practices, and you mentioned underlying causes before, how do we actually get to know what the cause is? How can we understand it? Because from someone that knows a fair amount about our health and our body and things, it's almost like the more that we know, the harder it becomes to actually get to the underlying cause. Because we always, there's so many of the same symptoms that can mean different things. Yes. And there's so many things that we might think are causes, but might actually just be symptoms, and things that we think are symptoms might actually be causes. And this sounds like there's this whole minefield of, well, we don't really know what the underlying causes are, so we're going to do something that someone recommends as work for something similar, and we realise that we are in fact just treating the symptoms as opposed to the underlying causes. So what could you share with us regarding how to actually find out what the underlying causes are?
Sure. So in the practice of energetic medicine, and so this is, I'm not just necessarily talking about in a practice of Reiki, which is what I do, but in other things like kinesiology as well, and probably to some extent traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda as well. We're looking at underlying causes in terms of emotions, really. So what is the underlying emotional cause of some conditions? So these practices basically go along the lines of that any condition, any physical or mental health condition, is going to have an underlying cause that may come from an emotional experience that's going on at the moment. It may come from an emotional experience that occurred early in life and that you may not actually have a conscious memory of, that may even have been something that occurred in a previous generation. So there is a lot more stuff in the media at the moment about epigenetics. So this is looking at things that have happened in previous generations and that actually affect our genes, and that the emotion, or even I like to think of it as the energy from that situation, gets carried through the gene pool and can actually come out in people in later generations. And it's absolutely amazing to think that we might be, you know, affected in that way by things that haven't even happened in our lifetime. But that is what we are looking at. So it's really digging really deep to try and get to what underlying causes of things are, especially if it's something that somebody's been dealing with for a long time, and that they just can't, like you're saying, they just can't figure out what the actual cause might be. And they go through treating a whole lot of symptoms in a whole lot of different ways and they're still not getting better, then I would definitely be, well, you know, regardless of what it is, I'll be looking with my clients at what are the potential underlying emotional causes of any condition. And it's quite incredible sometimes how you can lead people down that path in terms of talking about, so for example, with the joints are generally always about, if somebody has a knee problem, well, it's going to be something to do with flexibility, something to do with moving forward, to being able to take the next step in your life. And the minute you can suggest something like that to most people, then they'll go, oh, yes, okay, that makes sense. It relates to blah, 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 blah. And it's really powerful when people can really get to that. Now, obviously, if we're dealing with things along the epigenetic line where something has happened in a previous generation, then you might actually literally not know about it. And there are other ways that people can try and find out information about that. But even just having that understanding of, you know, if you go into the metaphysical anatomy of something and talk to people about, well, this is what the potential underlying causes emotionally for this kind of condition might be, and it may be something that you're not consciously aware of, then even just knowing that they don't have to be consciously aware of what it is and have that, you know, be able to put it in words, then for them to have that understanding of there is an underlying cause and it might be something along these lines, then it seems to bring about some kind of release of energy, and again, that they can have amazing results by letting that go, by just having that understanding that they don't need to be able to put everything into their conscious mind. And this is why one of the reasons that I love Reiki so much, and any other energetic medicine is going to work in the same way, that you don't have to actually have a clear-cut understanding of what the underlying cause is, because it's going to work on all levels of the body, and those emotional and mental levels of energy are going to be affected and treated, or don't really like the word treated, but they're going to be affected by that Reiki energy as well, even if you don't know exactly what it is that you're dealing with. So that's why it's so powerful. And a lot of the time this can come into play as well when people are seeking support for something that is a mental or psychological, emotional condition where, you know, like I spoke about before, the situation of grief, and they don't actually want to have to talk through the whole thing again. And this is in no way to take away from what psychologists and counsellors and things do. I think that's really important as well, that people need to do that. But then they might get to a point where they don't want it, they're all talked out. They don't want to talk about it anymore. They just want to feel better. And they don't have to talk through everything with an energetic medicine practitioner. They can just come along and have that energy directed to them, and it's going to help them feel better without them having to explain everything, because the energy is going to work anyway as long as they're open to it. Hope that answers your question. I feel like I've read it.
Oh, it's all right. I mean, there's a lot of things that you mentioned that I probably just want a little bit to maybe dig into. But I quite like the idea of things showing up emotionally as well. Yeah. So you mentioned quite a bit that emotion tends to be related to the underlying cause.
Yeah.
But there's quite a lot of questions that I have, and I don't know whether to ask them like two at a time, and you can maybe answer them or whatever. But you mentioned things like epigenetics as well. Now, I probably want to start off with this one. We can sort of dive into some of the others. Is that if something is epigenetically caused to a certain extent, that my first thought was, well, that means I clearly can't do anything about it. It's out of my hands because it's happened potentially hundreds of years ago, and it's been passed down, my sort of tendencies or whatever it happens to be. That would then lead a lot of people to turn around and say, well, that means that this is just the way I am and I can't really do much about it. What would you say to that?
I would say, just what I said before, that with using energy, then you can still clear that. So you don't need to know what it is, and you don't need to worry. And also just that, I think what they have worked out so far is they think that things can be carried through from up to 5 generations. So it's probably not hundreds of years, but yes, maybe 100 years. But yes, so basically this is the power of using energy, is that you don't have to have that, you don't have to be able to grasp onto it, you don't have to even know what it is, but it's going to work anyway. And it's all about moving and clearing energy again. So we are able to do that even if it happened that long ago. If it's somewhere in your body, and it doesn't have to, again, I'm always saying it's not necessarily your physical body, but obviously if we're talking about genetics, there's a physical component of it, but it's going to work anyway.
Right. Well, you mentioned emotions. I think we should probably sort of transition into that now. And what if it doesn't actually help you then figure out what to do about the thing that you're experiencing? So if you're like sad or depressed or anxious, or because a lot of people listening to this are people that run their own businesses. So these people are entrepreneurs, these people run their own businesses, and very often it's more of an emotional roller coaster than anything else, to say the least, right? A lot of people listening will probably be nodding their head when it comes to me explaining this. But
I'm nodding my head as well, Michael.
Yeah. So what happens if someone goes, well, I'm really anxious about X, Y, and Z? That might not actually make them feel better about their, predicament that they're in, because they might go, right, well, that doesn't make me any clearer on what, system of thought that I should use in terms of dealing with the situation, because I use the analogy of like knowing you're going to get hit by this football is a lot worse than not knowing, because you stood there staring at the football all the while thinking it's going to hit me, it's going to hit me, it's going to hit me. And then it actually makes the experience a lot worse. So if you know that you're in a bad place and you're not quite sure what to do about it, that can often make things worse than if you didn't have that level of awareness. But
Yeah.
but knowing that also doesn't mean you're any wiser on what practice to use. So is there a certain guideline that you can give our listeners? Is there a certain way of going, right, I'm feeling this way, this is the practice that I should use? Because we've mentioned quite a lot in terms of meditation and Reiki and acupuncture and, you name it. We probably got an A to Z we could cover. But it doesn't actually help that we have all these methods, that we have all these emotions. If anything, it could make our lives harder to find out what to do about the problem.
Yep. So I would say, first of all, I would say everybody should meditate regardless of how they feel about their life and what they feel may or may not be right or wrong with it. I think meditation just opens up a different part of our brain's capacity, and again, more and more studies being done that show that people who meditate are living their lives at a level of having higher mental capacity, less depression, sleeping better, less anxiety. Meditation is, you've brought it up, so I'll have my little rant about it. It's it is a practice. So people, and especially people who are pressed for time, will maybe give it a try. There are so many apps out there, so that's a great way to get going. And even there's YouTube videos and things like that. One app that I really love is called Insight Timer, because it has about 8,000 different types of meditation on it. And everybody can always find a style that they like on there, but it's a practice. So it's not something that you can expect you're going to be able to sit still for 15 minutes and feel like you are diving deep into the realms of your mind. You need to just keep giving it a go. Our brain is designed to think, just like our heart is designed to beat. We cannot stop our brain from thinking. But when you get more into a meditation practice and you're able to put that thought into a focus onto something, for example, like the breath, then that is where we're going to get benefits. So I'd really, really encourage everybody out there to not give up, to not say, I've tried meditation and it doesn't work for me. Everybody feels like that when they first start doing meditation, and you've just got to persevere with it. And make it a part of your life, like brushing your teeth, that it's just something that you wouldn't not do every day. So that's meditation. And I've completely forgotten what your question was. But it was around what should people do. So, and also as far as Reiki, I would say it will benefit everybody, and especially for those things where they're feeling anxious. And it's not going to say to them, this is what you need to do about this problem, but it's going to bring back that energetic balance so that you feel less anxious, and then you're able to deal with the problem. I certainly would, and there are, a number of my clients that, they might come to me when they're already having some other kind of counselling, or even, in a business situation where you might be having mentoring or coaching or something like that. And I'm not certainly not going to say that Reiki is going to replace that, but what it's going to do is it's going to put your mind in a position, because of the energetic balance that we're bringing about, that it's going to put your mind in a place where it's much more receptive and able to think clearly and able to make decisions and able to work out what is the next best thing that I need to do. So it's really a support tool. Apart from putting my plug in for Reiki, I would say to people that go with gut feel. I think we don't do that enough in Western society. So if you think that something sounds good, then go with it. Get on good old Google and look up your word, what you think you're feeling. You're feeling anxious. We'll type that into Google and see what comes up as far as what people are suggesting has worked, what comes up as a potential option for you. I think if you're open to something, it's always going to be of some benefit. You're always going to get something out of it. But if you go to kind of a broad spectrum practice like meditation or like Reiki, then you're going to be able to, it's going to help you with anything that you're trying to deal with.
Right, so it's almost, so are there kind of, you do Reiki for X, Y, and Z, you do acupuncture for X, Y, and Z. Is it actually possible to find those things? So it's just a case of doing a bit of due diligence and research before you go out there and decide on what practice to use? Or is it literally just like what you're open to, what you think would work? Is it possible to do it through researching and going, I'm experiencing this, and I do a bit of good old Google, and we get to a point where we go, therefore acupuncture or reflexology is the way, or is it going to take a bit more than that?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right, that's how you can do it. And and then there'll be things like, so if we take acupuncture as an example, there'll be plenty of people out there who don't want needles stuck in them. I mean, it's not like having an injection. They only get really just placed on your skin. And same with reflexology. There's plenty of people out there who don't like having their feet touched, so they're not going to choose reflexology. But all of those practices are working with the body's energies, and that everything is interconnected within the body. So I would definitely go with recommendations if somebody that you know has tried something and has found a practitioner who's really good. And I think that's one of the key things, is all of these practices are quite personal to some extent. You want to work with somebody that you feel comfortable with, and that really comes into play as well. And again, it's also about your openness to what you're going to receive, because if you go and see someone and you don't really click with them, or you don't like their approach or their manner, or you don't like the room that they work in, then, it's all going to be to detract from the benefit that you might receive. I certainly think that, as I said, going with someone who is recommended by someone who perhaps has had a similar condition is really great idea as well. And that, that applies really for anything in life. It's always great to go with a recommendation, but certainly for practitioners, if you've got a friend who recommends somebody, then they're going to know you, hopefully, and understand what kind of person you're going to like with as well. So you're going to have that benefit of somebody that hopefully you are going to click with, in terms of feeling comfortable and feeling like this person's going to be able to help you.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, it does seem like, there are preferences as well. Like, people don't like massages because they don't like people touching them and all those kinds of things. So a lot of it would come down to personal preference. So just before we finish, last couple of questions for you. If someone would like to find out more about you and what you've got going on, if someone wants to find out about what you do, maybe see what you've got going on, where can they go?
So probably the best place is my website. So it's Even Star Wellbeing. So it's just one word.com. And I do have heaps and heaps of stuff on my blog about all different things to do with wellbeing. So they can check them out there. And then there's links from my website to my Facebook page. I've pretty much got all the social media going on. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even Google Plus. I don't know if anybody out there is actually on Google Plus, but I'm on there. So yes, they can connect with me and follow me and see all my multitude of content that I have out there on all those channels.
All right, good stuff. Last question. So this is where we can blow things wide open now. So this answer doesn't have to be on context. It can be random. It can be whatever you want. We've had favourite foods and all kinds. So last question. What would you like the world to know about you that it doesn't already know?
I've always wanted to get a tattoo and I haven't had the guts to do it yet.
All right, well, I think it's a great time to end. Awren, thanks for joining me on the show. I appreciate you carving out the time. I know it's quite early for you, so even more grateful that you took the time. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
All right, thanks so much, Michael.